Kurt Conquest and I hiked the Lower Ute Trail and Tombstone Ridge in Rocky Mountain National Park on July 12, 2024. Our 4-hour hike began at 08:30 a.m. and ended at 12:30 p.m., covering 8 miles. There are 2 Ute trails in Rocky Mountain National Park. The upper trail goes from the Alpine Visitor Center down to Milner Pass on the Continental Divide. The lower Ute Trail, called the Ute Crossing, is located 2 miles up from Rainbow Curve on Trail Ridge Road. The hike begins from a small parking area with enough room for roughly 8 or 9 vehicles. There's another small parking area located about a quarter mile farther up the road. The Ute Indians called themselves Nuche, meaning mountain people. The word Ute is a corruption of the Spanish word yutas, meaning people who live in shelters covered with straw, a description of the dome-shaped brush lodges in which the Ute Indians lived. The Lower Ute Trail was used by Arapaho and Ute Indians on their journeys between winter and summer hunting grounds on the eastern Great Plains. According to the publication Rocky Mountain National Park, A History, Native Americans, they traveled across the national park using several east-west routes, including Forest Canyon, Flat Top Mountain, Fall River, and this route known as Ute Crossing. The Lower Ute Trail offers hikers expansive views and alpine tundra scenery without having to do a lot of climbing. Trekking entirely above tree line allows one to enjoy panoramic views along the entire route. Though mostly flat, the hike does include 2 short climbs as you trek along Tombstone Ridge. The first begins just beyond the trailhead, while the second begins at roughly the 1-mile mark. At these lofty heights, hikers should expect a lot of sun and wind, as well as the possibility of an afternoon thunderstorm. Although our hike began early, the east to west wind was blowing strong, 40 to 50 miles per hour. But the temperature was agreeable, and our long-sleeve shirts and wide-brim hats with stampede strings to keep them on provided good protection from the sun and the wind. Alpine tundra begins where trees cannot survive the extremes of cold, snow, and strong winds and a short growing season. In Rocky Mountain National Park, this zone begins at elevations between 11,000 and 11,500 feet, depending on exposure to the sun. Much of the alpine tundra in the Rocky Mountain National Park is covered with dense turfs of grasses that support various animals. The rich soils of the tundra also support a variety of wildflowers, including the alpine sunflower, which only grows in the Rocky Mountains. Only a few animals, such as pikas, ptarmigans, and marmots, live year-round at these elevations. Others, such as ravens, hawks, coyotes, and elk, will migrate onto the tundra during the summer months. I have seen elk on previous hikes here, but none this time. Horses revolutionized the Ute lifestyle. By the early 1700s, mounted Ute and Comanche warriors came raiding out of the mountains, attacking the homes of plains-dwelling Apaches who were then living in eastern Colorado. Horses also transformed the Utes into skillful bison hunters. Hunting trips onto the eastern plains meant that the buffalo soon became the Utes' chief economic resource, providing teepee covers, blankets, sinew thread, bowstrings, glue from the horns, skin bags, moccasins, and meat in greater quantities than the Utes had ever known. Bison meat could be dried, reducing its weight by 10 times, easily transported and stored for months. A half-pound of concentrated dried meat was an adequate daily ration for an adult. 2 full-grown adult bison or 20 antelope would dry into about 100 pounds. This quantity had the potential to sustain a family group of 6 persons for about a month, which would tide the family over during critical times in most winters. Indian wars by 1755 forced the Utes to retreat back to the western slope of the Rockies. They returned to hunt on the Great Plains once or twice a year, but they tended to remain within the protective shadow of the Rockies. It was during this era of war-making and hunting that the Utes traveled across Rocky Mountain National Park's east to west trails. Trail Ridge, Flat Top Mountain, and the Fall River routes were used. The lower Ute Trail, Timberline Pass, Forest Canyon route was an obvious pathway. The trail tops out at about 11,660 feet and then begins to gradually drift downhill for the remaining portions of the route. From this point forward, there are commanding views of Long's Peak towards the south, the highest mountain in the park at 14,259 feet. On the right, looking towards the southwest, is Forest Canyon and the Tombstone River. Along the left of the trail is Tombstone Ridge, stunning rock formations begging to be climbed, abundant with alpine wildflowers, and larger ones including Colorado state flower, the beautiful columbine. Eventually, a large rock outcropping and a dramatic drop in the trail elevation means that Timberline Pass has been reached. That spot marks the final destination for this hike, as the trail continued down through Windy Gulch and Forest Canyon into Upper Beaver Meadows at the north end of Moraine Valley. This is Larry W. Jones, and enjoy your hike.